When you first start learning how to trade, it can feel really overwhelming getting to grips with candlestick patterns, chart layouts, indicators, psychology, risk management. And on top of that, you're having to get to grips with new trading software and figuring out what's useful, what's not actually useful. So in this video, I am going to show you my favorite tools on ThinkMarkets, the ones that I use every single day and I couldn't live without. If you're excited to learn, hit the thumbs up button before we get started. And if you want to see more content like this, make sure to hit subscribe to ThinkMarkets now. So as a key levels trader, the tool which I use the most is the horizontal line tool, because this is what I use to draw on my key levels. On ThinkMarkets, along the left-hand side, you have a lot of the tools that are available. On the second one down, if you go to the drop-down menu, you'll see the horizontal line tool is here. Because I use it so much, I've put a little star next to it, which means it's one of my favorites, and it shows up on the screen, so it's easy for me to grab whenever I need it. So I'm just going to grab one of those, and I'm going to draw on a fake key level. And another tool which I like to use a lot is the text tool. This means that I can mark up my key levels, and that means that I know what they relate to and how long I want to keep them on my chart for. So I'm just going to write key level for this one. And another tool which I use all of the time is the vertical line tool, which also comes under the same drop-down menu as the horizontal line. It's this one here. I use this to divide different sections up on my chart so that I can easily see highs and lows from that section. So as an example, because I live in the UK, but I trade the New York session, I'm looking at an entire day going from 5 a.m. to 5 a.m. So if I just draw up from 5 a.m. on one day to 5 a.m. on the next day, that means that I can see really clearly the high and the low of that day. The high and the low of the previous day are always really good key levels. So if I grab my horizontal line tool and I mark up the high, and then I use the text tool to say yesterday's high, and then I can put another one down on the low and put on the text yesterday's low. That means that I can see really clearly where the high and the low are. These are great key levels because often what happens is the low or the high will get taken out before there's a move in another direction. So you can see we've had a really nice example of that happening here. Another tool which I use all of the time is the measure tool. This one here. This tells you how big a move there was. So if we wanted to measure how much the market moved yesterday, we can go from yesterday's low to yesterday's high, and that tells us that the move was 440 points. This is really helpful because sometimes if there is such a big move, like 1,000 points in a day, and it was really unexpected, that can actually affect how the market moves the next day. And sometimes the market's more likely to consolidate if there was a really big move. Bear in mind, this is on the US 30, which is the market that I trade. It might be slightly different on other markets. But I always like to measure how much the market has moved so I know how I'm going to be tackling the next day. Another reason why the measure tool is really helpful is if you're first starting out and you're still developing your trading strategy, you want to know how big the move is, the big move is, because you want to know where your stop loss and your take profit ought to go. So constantly measuring the market and measuring the big moves means you have an idea of how much the market has moved and therefore how much it's likely to move. Other tools which I use every single day for every trade I place are the long position and short position tool. Again, on the drop down menu, you'll see 3 lines across and either a dotted line up for the long position or a dotted line down for short position. I'm going to grab the long position tool and show you how I use it. So say if I was taking a trade off this key level, I would just click it here. This green area shows me when it's in profit and the red area shows me when it's at a loss. This helps me to visually map my trade on the chart. Really helpful, especially when I'm using key levels, so that I know where my stop loss and my take profit are in relation to key levels. So say, for example, this was my entry and I did a standard stop loss of around 30 points. I would drag this up to perhaps the next key level. So Yesterday's low is always a great key level. This isn't actually a trading strategy. This is just an example of how I use this tool. But what it helps me to do is to see where my stop loss and my take profit are. And it also gives me other really useful information, such as the risk to reward ratio. I also like to watch my trade play out on the chart rather than looking at the money amount on my app. I just find it really helpful for my trading psychology to focus on trading well rather than on the making money side of it. Another tool which I use all of the time is Fibonacci, which is actually along the top because it's a candle type. So instead of normal candlesticks, which we've got up at the moment, I like to use Fibonacci to gauge momentum. Whereas normal candlesticks show you the open, the close, and the high and the low over that time period, Fibonacci uses a slightly different formula, which kind of smooths out the appearance of the trend, and it can help you to know whether the market has momentum in one direction or whether it's slowing down. So these green candlesticks with the flat base and wick at the top show that the market has bullish momentum. The red candlesticks with a flat top and wick at the base show that the market has bearish momentum. And when the candles are either color, but they've got wick at the top and at the base, this shows that there is indecisive momentum. Indecisive momentum comes up when the market is having a pullback, but also it's the first sign of a reversal. So you don't want to be making a decision on an indecision candle. And especially if you're trading reversals, you want to see that the market has actually changed direction with momentum before you're looking for an entry. I don't use a lot of indicators on my trading, but there are a couple which I find really helpful. One of them is the Fibonacci retracement, which can be found, it's the third one down, and the drop-down menu is the top Fib retracement. It can draw on your key levels for you, but most often I use it to find the 50% point between two gaps. So I dragged it from here to here. So if I was seeing a new week open gap, for example, I would drag it from the top to the bottom, and I would see the 50% point along here. I can then use my horizontal line tool to just mark it up, and then I can always get rid of the Fib retracement and I can mark it up there as 50% point. Other indicators on ThinkMarkets can be found using this little symbol along the top here. If you click on it, you can type into the search bar what indicator you're looking for. Otherwise, they're in alphabetical order. Another one which I like to use is the VWAP, which stands for volume weighted average price. So not only does it tell you the average price like a regular moving average, but it actually gives weighting to volume, which means that if big players or big institutional traders, for example, have put on a lot of buy orders, it will give greatest weighting to that. So I like to use it as a way to rule out trades. So I would say that if the market is above the VWAP, I will only be looking for buy positions. And if the market is below the VWAP, I will only be looking for sell positions. And finally, a really helpful tool is this little hide tool along the side here, because if your chart starts to look busy and cluttered because you've put too many levels on it, you can click this here and now you've got a nice clean chart. The Trader's Gym at ThinkMarkets is another tool which I use all of the time. It's a simulator which allows you to practice your strategy using virtual money. And although I don't use it every day, I do sometimes use it all day. And it's particularly good on the weekend when the market is closed, but you still feel like you want to practice or do something productive. So now you can practice using all of the tools which I've shown you in this video on the Trader's Gym. If you found this video helpful and you got some value out of it, make sure to give it a little thumbs up.